Welcome to the Growth Catalyst Show, where we believe that growth could come in many forms: professional, personal, company, sales, you name it. I'm your host, Dan Mahoney, founder of Transcendent Sales Solutions and a guide to a world of growth possibilities. I've spent my career empowering companies and their people with strategies that accelerate growth. I'm here to bring you stories of these business leaders and their trusted advisors to gain insights into their journeys and learn how they fuel their own growth. Just maybe their journey could become part of your own growth story. Are you ready? Let's grow. Welcome to the next episode of the Growth Catalyst Show. I'm your host, Dan Mahoney. My next guest is Cary Matthews, and he is the managing partner of Opal Partners Group, where he provides fractional COO services, business strategy coaching, and team development workshops. He helps his clients craft a vision and strategic plan that is actionable and inspiring. Cary's experience with small business goes back over 20 years as an operational leader and business advisor. Cary, welcome to the Growth Catalyst Show.
Dan, it's great to be here.
Glad to have you. So let's dig right in. Atlanta native, I know you're here now. Is this where you always were from?
You, compared to a lot of people, yes. I've been here since '94, but I grew up in Middle Georgia. Took a slight detour through Alabama and then for college and came back to Georgia.
Where in Middle Georgia?
Warner Robins.
Warner Robins. Okay. Well, it's definitely gotten big down there. They got a Buc-ee's close to there, which is probably Warner Robins is on the map now with Buc-ee's, right? Close to it.
Oh yeah. Mom and dad go there for lunch sometimes. So it's huge.
I love going there and watching people the first timers going into Buc-ee's, and they've got that stunned look on their face, like, oh, it's like, it's going to be okay. I know it's a big gas station.
Yeah. What is this place?
So you found yourself to Auburn, I see, with engineering degree and then an MBA, War Eagle.
War Eagle.
So what was the plan out of school? I mean, starting out with, I don't know if you got your MBA right after getting your engineering, but what was the plan coming out of school? What did you think you were going to do?
So I actually did get my MBA right afterwards because I wanted that balance of business and technical knowledge. That was always my plan. And for whatever reason, I think possibly because my cousin, who's older than me, was in telecom, I thought I want to be a VP to a telecom company. And I ended up, my first job was out of grad school was with Bell South.
Wow. And that industry's changed quite a bit. You think about how big telecom was 25, 30 years ago, right? Like Sprint and all those and the Bell Wars and everything, how much things have changed.
Oh, I know it's all moved to cellular and internet now.
VoIP. Yep, absolutely. So talk about some of the experiences you had in your early career. What are the same things that you did, early on?
So my very first job was as a college student, my first real job. And I was a software engineer for the Air Force. I wrote software that tested the attack radar of the F-111. And a lot of people were competing for machine time to test our programs. So one of my counterparts said, I'll take night shift. And he started working on individual tests. And I worked on, in the daytime, compiling the tests together and then doing the business side of it, realized the mix of business and technical was for me. So I did that for quite a while until I graduated. Then came out and I ended up in sales of all places with Bell South, technical sales. And after doing that for a couple of years, my biggest account was UPS. I was managing that for 9 states and moved into sales operations. And that's where I really fell in love with the whole operations side of business. For an engineer, it's like, oh, we get to put things in order and think logically. This is handmade for me.
And that doesn't usually happen in sales, right?
No. And it's the cool thing. I was in sales operations. So like, okay, the sales side that stretched me, I got to combine with the stuff that I was naturally more gifted at. And it was a lot of fun.
I've been in sales for 30 plus years. And I remember early on, there was no such thing as sales ops or sales enablement, or, there was like, oh, we have a sales assistant who can help us maybe do a quote or for bigger companies, someone that can help us with RFP, but not a whole operation side. So that's really talks about how much the profession is involved.
Oh yeah. If you go back to the day, the telecom companies had so much data, so many accounts. and to bring all that together. And they were some of the pioneers in using CRM. So I was pulling all that stuff together to help people manage their accounts and get the quotes and everything they needed.
And I really do think companies like Salesforce have helped for companies create sales ops because it's so extensive and like you said, there's so much data.
Oh yeah, you can find so many insights and so many things that you just don't see unless you really look at the data analytically. And it's something that a salesperson doesn't have time to do. They need to be out selling. Let's let the ops people do that for you.
Plus, all salespeople are clapping and smiling that are listening to this, but we all know they don't use CRM systems. Usually, the good ones are the worst users of it. So, I mean, it's just the way it is.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, so you worked for a lot of companies, and I know you had a really good specialization in small to mid-sized businesses and worked with a lot of those. Tell me about what you learned, like when you were on the company side working with small to mid-sized businesses.
Well, first of all, I learned that I loved small business. It was like a breath of fresh air going from a Fortune 50, a Fortune 100 company to a small business. And my first experience with that was with a .com that went .bomb, but that's all right. Um, but I found out that being present really matters, that you can pivot quickly, that you can have such an impact just with what you do and what you say. And the people that you have around you are so important. You don't have a lot of fat. If you've got bone and muscle and you really can't cut into that too deeply, and having the wrong person, not having the right tools can really impact what you can do. And I just love watching these teams come together and do something that's really cool. I mean, I've sort of learned over the past several years, you look around and things that businesses do, like I never thought about somebody has to have a business that does this thing. It's amazing what you can see that small businesses provide for our communities.
I didn't want to interrupt you, but I almost yelled amen when you talked about, the difference between a small business and working for the Fortune 50 companies, because I was there, and just the time it take to do anything, it just sometimes was just, it choked the business.
Oh yeah, the small business, you can get the right people in the room, and in a matter of minutes or hours, sometimes, depending upon the scope of the question, make a decision and pivot. And you can do the right thing for clients that would take forever to get approved in a large company.
So before we pivot into Opal Partners, talk about what do you like to do for fun, and what's when you're not working, what's a weekend or time off look like for you?
Well, what I enjoy and what I'm good at may be different. I enjoy fishing. I'm not that great at it, apparently.
I
Everybody
thought
says,
you were going to say golf. I thought you were going to say golf.
I gave that up a long time ago.
Me too.
I spend a lot of time with my dog. He, he has some friends in the neighborhood. We all get together and hang out in the evenings. And I love to hike. He loves to hike. I like to fish. I've been trying to teach myself fly fishing. Um, Got to go bass fishing this past weekend and actually caught two or three. So had a nice day. But anything being outdoors, hanging out with friends, and I'm a happy guy.
And doggy play dates. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I would love to do that, but my dog doesn't like other dogs because he's jealous. So
Oh, mine's got a girlfriend. So he was about a year old and she was about 6 months old, and we met in our neighborhood, and they get together just about once or twice a day, every day.
let's take a moment for a quick word from our sponsor. This episode of the Growth Catalyst Show was brought to you by Transcendent Sales Solutions. Whether your company is facing uncertainty, declining sales, or resource limitations, Transcendent Sales has the solution. Their team has decades of experience helping businesses find alignment to meet their growth goals and transforming underperforming sales organizations into revenue-producing market leaders. They take a hands-on, results-oriented approach to solving sales challenges. Visit transcendentsales.com to learn more and subscribe to the bi-weekly Growth Catalyst newsletter for insightful growth strategies. Transcendent Sales Solutions, empowering businesses to reach new heights. And now back to the show. That's all right. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, as long as everybody's taken care of, you won't have any more doggies around. That's good.
Oh, yeah, they don't have the equipment for that.
All right, that's good. Well, let's go back to Opal Partners Group. So, talk about that point when you decided to make that pivot and get into starting your own business? And when was that?
That was about 7.5 years ago. And it actually was a little unexpected. I thought this might be something I would do when I quote retired. I don't believe in retiring. I think you have to have a purpose when you get up every morning. But I thought I always wanted to take all the education and tools and things that I've learned, people that invested in me, and share that with people who haven't had that benefit. There was an opportunity that came up. Company I was with went through a major reorg. Um, I decided at that point to start my own business, and that company was my first client, actually. And so I pivoted from being a W-2 employee to taking that fractional approach to COO work and investing in other small businesses.
Okay. So, and I know you started out doing mostly fractional COO work and doing that, but your business has evolved in some of the services you're offering, correct?
That's true. So I've been primarily a fractional COO for the better part of 7 years. And when you're a fractional COO, you really dig in and you're in the day to day. I noticed that my particular skill set and the things I naturally enjoy gravitate more towards the strategy piece. Um, do we have the right people? Do we have the right infrastructure? Do we have the right tools? Are we doing the right things? Are we asking the right questions rather than some of the more process driven type operational things? And having worked with different business frameworks with all my different clients, I started gravitating towards business coaching. And I have since gotten certified in System and Soul, which is a business framework that has an emphasis not on just the systems and the processes of the business, but also the humanity of the organization.
Yeah, talk about systems and soul because I've heard if you give, I've heard a little bit about it, but I don't know much.
It's one of the newer systems out there, and you've probably heard of these other uh, operating systems like Pinnacle and Scaling Up and EOS, and they're
Hmm.
all very similar. That they give you a structure to run your business. What I like about System and Soul is it has a lot of the same tools that some of the other ones do. There's just basic table stakes you have to have, a strategic plan, the way you execute, the way you measure. But System and Soul is designed to be really flexible around the needs of the business. And it also has a focus that some of the other ones don't on not just values, but organizational habits, how you drive culture, how you develop people. And it really adds that piece that I thought was missing in some of the other systems and lets you put that together. So you're not just putting the rigor in place, you're also investing in the people who are going to actually execute for your business. And we use that as our competitive advantage.
That's great. I didn't know that. And the people part is a big part of it. The other certification I learned that you have, it's the 6 types of work genius certification. I have never heard of that. So you've got to fill me in what that means and what that's all
Okay.
about.
Yeah. So I'm sure you've heard of Patrick Lencioni, right?
Yes. Oh yeah,
It's
absolutely.
This is something he developed, and he actually came up with this through frustrations in his own organization. I think he probably it started around the beginning of COVID, and he was trying to do things. He was getting really frustrated, and he sat down to figure this out. And what he realized was that there are 6 really different aspects to kicking off a project, solving a problem from ideation through activation, and that usually people are really excited and energized by 2 of them. There's usually a couple of them that just drain them. And then there's a couple that they can do. It doesn't really, one way or the other, doesn't really matter. So he created this assessment and it's gone through some validation on which of those 6 steps really excite you and make you want to just jump in and go, which ones just kind of kill your energy. So he created this assessment, and we'll do it as either as an individual or you do it as a team. And it's really powerful when you do it with a team, like a project team or a department. And you can see what their overall team map looks like, where they're really strong, where they're weak, what might come about because they're missing or they're super heavy in a particular working genius. I like to tell everybody it's 20% personality and 80% productivity.
Interesting. Well, I start and I'm trying to think like, okay, the six things of starting a project, and I don't even know what the six are, but I'm guessing the execution piece on it's probably the one that people don't like, right?
It depends. But the one that people miss is the middle step. So the six working geniuses spell out the word widget. So you have
Okay.
wonder, you have invention, you have discernment, you have galvanizing, enablement, and tenacity.
Okay.
And the WI, that's your innovation and ideation piece. The two
Hmm.
middle letters, that's really where you're galvanizing people. You're testing, is this the right solution? Going back and forth to refine it. Then you get people excited about it. Then you go to the enablement piece, and that's where the tenacity comes in, and that's where getting people, how can you help people go about driving to completion? People
Hmm.
skip that middle step. Let's
Hmm.
test and refine and get the troop rallied around the solution. They go straight from idea to execution, and that's where there's problems.
Oh, interesting. That's good. I'd have to. I'm sure there's a book somewhere, like everywhere else. There's probably a book on that, right?
I'm sure. I think he does have a book. I know he has an online assessment that
Okay.
breaks down a lot of that the information, and then we use those group assessments in workshops to help teams understand how they're using their working geniuses.
Very cool. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the strategic plans that you help clients build. Because there's the strategic plan. And then I think there's also operational plans. There could be sales plans. Talk about what does a plan coming from you look like?
So I use the system and soul plan. And it's funny, when I first started my practice, I did sort of a survey and I studied a lot of different companies and things, different books, and kind of came up with my own version of a one-page strategic plan. And when I saw what System and Soul put together, it's like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I was envisioning, just done to the next level. Um, I try to make them as simple as possible and want to understand what your company DNA is. What do you do well? Why are people buying from you rather than somebody else? What makes you unique? Uh, what's the purpose behind what you do? And then what drives your company? In System and Soul language, we talk about the onlyness statement. We're the only blank that does blank, only marketing agency that does whatever. Your destinations, where are you going? When are you going to get there? And why are you doing it? And you have to have that why. Then we borrowed the hedgehog concept from Jim Collins. What can we be best in the world at? What are we passionate about? And what drives our economic engine? You take all those things together, you create the culture equation, we call it. It's the values, our organizational habits that drives our culture. Given all that, we can then place bets on where we want to be in the future. And using those future goals, we come up with objectives for each quarter for us to tackle to work on the business, not in the business.
Which is the biggest problem many business owners, CEOs have is they're always working in versus on.
It is. It's so easy to get sucked into that day to day that to be intentional and take time away is critical. There's a book called Growing Pains, and they in that book there's the pyramid of organizational development, and they say that the competitive advantage is built at the top of that pyramid, and the top of that pyramid is culture, and right below that is management systems. So all the other things, the customers, the operational systems, the tools, the resources, the people, every business has those. You differentiate yourself by driving your culture and building in your management operating system.
Are you still going to be doing the fractional COO work as well?
I am. I'm doing both. Um,
Okay.
it'll be a mix. The fractional COO work obviously means I'm working with clients usually on a weekly basis.
Hmm.
The business coaching, it's more a monthly type thing and a quarterly. So we have quarterly planning, we have annual planning, and then we have the setup. But I like to add in some touch bases with my clients on a monthly basis to make sure that they're driving through what they set their goals on, and they don't have any questions that I can help with, just to keep them accountable and be a resource to them to really make the the strategic plan stick.
One thing, whether you're doing coaching or you're doing COO work, it's similar with the VP of sales work I do. Is we're facilitating change, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a change piece in there. And I've learned, especially with small companies, they get these systems that they build and these ways that they do things that's not optimal, but becomes routine everyday life. I'm sure you see this. How do you, and especially working on the operational side, how do you approach this? And because a lot of times there's resistance in that, because it's like, no, because we've just always done it this way.
You do see that. And you can always go back to the statement, well, if you're sick and tired of getting the same results, what are we going to do differently? We can't do the same thing and expect different results. So that's usually one of the starting points. One of the beauties of what I do as a fractional COO, I'm coming in from the outside, I'm looking in. And most small businesses have the same challenges. They're not usually very industry specific. I mean, there's some nuances, but I get to ask questions. And I can be ignorant of your industry, and that gives me permission to ask a dumb question. And I'll say, why are we doing this? Or why is that important? And they have to articulate it to me. And sometimes they just don't have a good answer other than, well, we've always done that. So that's when you get the, okay, let's explore this and we can look and see what we can do differently.
Very true. And and I know you mentioned also that you maybe do some workshops and you have some strategic workshops. We've talked about this before. What does a strategic workshop look like? I mean, when you're doing that with clients.
So I've got a couple of different flavors. If I'm working with a client that a potential client, and they just want to get an experience of what working with a coach looks like, I do what's called a strategy sprint. And we take 90 minutes to work on your biggest opportunities and challenges and what you can do and accomplish in the next 90 days. So you walk out of there prioritized on what you can do to affect your business in 90 days. If I'm talking to a group, I'm actually doing a workshop next Tuesday for a group of CEOs, and we're going to do a simplified strategic planning. And I'm going to cover why strategic planning sometimes fails, give them tools for what strategic planning, how you can execute better on strategic planning. And then we're actually going to go through in a very condensed format, the system and soul roadmap. And they're going to walk out of there after 2 hours with a rough draft of a strategic plan customized for their business.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And then hopefully they'll want to take it to the next step and call you.
I hope so.
Talk about some success stories you've had, and I'm sure there's numerous, but which one that's near and dear to your heart that comes to mind and some of the work you've done over the past 7.5 years?
So I'll tell you a story, but I'll tell you about a comment first. I was working with a client, been working with them for quite a while, coming up on 3 years now, and they've been wrestling with a particular report. And I was sitting in on one of the departmental meetings, and this report came up, and I said, well, why don't you just do this? And they just stopped and said, we've been trying to figure that out for 2 years. And the CFO said, Cary, you just take things that are hard and make them simple for us. You make it where we can understand it. I loved that's what she got out of what we were doing. Because to me, it seemed like a natural answer, but they've been wrestling with it. And I was able to make it really clear for them. So I really enjoyed that. I think one of the biggest successes is I had a client that they're very paper intensive on their billing. And they were sending out on the beginning of every month, they were sending out a reminder that people needed to fill out these paper forms. Some of the forms are for work that was done in the past, some of it for work that's done in the future. They have 2 different pay schedules. They had to send that in. Then they would take that, generate an invoice, send it out, and then people would send in a paper check. And billing took 3 weeks out of the month. We took that. I wrote down the business requirements, vetted some software vendors. We picked one, and then I project managed the implementation of that from the customer side, working with the project manager of the technology side. And now every bit of that automated. Reports generate automatically. The reminders go out automatically. They pay via ACH. They sign electronically, and we can get all the reports we need with the touch of a button.
And I bet you the months close a lot faster too.
Oh yeah. Well,
And
they've
the
added a lot
quarters
more
and the
clients since
years.
then, so who knows?
Absolutely. Well, this has been a great discussion, Cary. Last question. If someone is interested in learning more about Opal Partners and systems for soul certified coaching or, anything that you're doing, what's the best way to get a hold of you and connect?
So you can go to my website, which is opalpg.com, opalpg.com. There's a contact button there. You can certainly email me at cmatthews@opalpg.com, or you can give me a call at 678-845-6141.
Cary, this was great. I'm glad you came on today to the Growth Catalyst Show. We learned a lot today about some new things, and I appreciate you taking the time.
Dan, it's been a pleasure. It's been a lot of fun catching up.
Thank you. And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Growth Catalyst Show. Remember, you can take these stories of growth and make them part of your own journey. Learn from them, draw inspiration, and let them guide your path of growth. I'm your host, Dan Mahoney, and I look forward to our next journey together. If you've enjoyed the show, please subscribe and leave a review. Until next time, keep growing.